write that
He's
down.
doing all the certification stuff.
Good evening, everyone. I'll call to order the Sparks Planning Commission meeting of September 6, 2018. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everyone watching on the internet and Sparks Centennial TV. I'm filling in for Diane tonight as chair. So I'd ask my colleagues on the commission, if you have a comment or a question, please direct it through me. I'll do my best to make sure you get called on. We'll get this meeting running smoothly tonight. Second item on our agenda is roll call. Madam Secretary, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carey,
Present?
Commissioner Brock,
Here.
Commissioner Hewens,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson,
Present.
Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Commissioner Shabazz,
Here.
Commissioner Vanderwell is absent. Assistant City Attorney Brandon Sendall,
Here.
Assistant Community Services Director of Development Armando Ornelas.
Here.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the agenda. Item number 3 is public comment. This public comment period is for any action item on tonight's agenda or just general public comment. You're limited to 3 minutes. This time I'll open up the public comment period. If anyone wishes to speak, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period and we'll move on to item number 4. Item number 4 is approval of the agenda. Did we have any corrections or changes by staff?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda as read then.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Peterson. Is there a second?
A second. Commissioner
Second by
Brock.
Commissioner Brock. Thank you very much. Any questions, discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. We'll move on to item number 5. That's approval of the minutes. Let's take up the July 31st Planning Commission study session minutes. Were there any changes or corrections to those meeting minutes?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Fewens, I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Fewens. Is there a second?
I second.
Got a second by Commissioner Shabazz. Any questions, discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Sustain.
Abstain.
All those opposed, say nay. Are there any abstentions? Well, I think I heard Frank and Mary on that one.
I was not there.
No, I wasn't
Okay.
there either.
So we have 2 abstentions, so the motion carries 4-0 against with 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, we'll move on to item number 6. That's announcements and committee reports.
How about the minutes for the planning meeting?
Oh, thank you, yeah. That would be good if we got the commission meeting done. All right, we'll look at the August 2nd Planning Commission meeting minutes. Were there any changes to those minutes?
Vice Chair Carey, this is Commissioner Brock. I move to approve the minutes of the August 2nd Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Commissioner Reed, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Are there any questions or discussions on the motion by the commission? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving the August 2nd, 2018 Planning Commission meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Abstain.
Abstain.
So we have 2 abstentions. Let me make sure we have Commissioner Peterson and Commissioner Shabazz. Okay. So I think that'll pass 4-0 against and 2 abstentions, Commissioner Peterson and Commissioner Shabazz. All right, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 6. That's announcements and committee reports.
Vice Chairman Carey, this is Armando Ornelas, the Assistant Community Services Director. The only announcements are that to affirm that there will be no second meeting in September for the Planning Commission, so that meeting would have occurred on September 20th. That will be canceled, meaning that the next Planning Commission meeting will occur on October the 4th.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Be sure to tune in, everyone. Item number 7 is informational items. Do we have any informational items?
We do not, Commissioner. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. We'll move on to public hearing items. Item number 8, that's PCN 180039, This is consideration and possible approval of a request for a conditional use permit to allow the new construction of a 32-unit multifamily townhouse project on a site 3.1 acres in size in the new urban district.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Carey, members of the Planning Commission. Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. Make sure I get the microphone near me, as I know I sometimes avoid talking into it. As mentioned, this is a conditional use permit request for a 32-unit townhome subdivision. This is located, as you can see on the map, here, more or less on the corner of Galleria Parkway and Los Altos Parkway. The request is for a 32-unit townhome subdivision. The handbook designates this area as RSCO2, which is retail, service, commercial, and office. It's a designation in that handbook that doesn't really occur anywhere else, but it does list townhomes specifically as a use that is permitted subject to a conditional use permit. So the handbook for the Spanish Springs Town Center does specifically, as I said, allow multifamily or townhome subdivisions, but they don't have any standards for residential development. And so staff is recommending that, has recommended a condition, I believe it's condition number 3, that would require them to comply with the requirements of the multifamily zoning district, because that is the zoning district that would regulate townhome subdivisions if it were a straight zone property. And so we felt that was the best applicable standards. In reviewing both the site plans and the elevations, they do appear to be in substantial conformance with those standards. We also required a trip generation letter with the submittal to see how this new development would impact traffic on the surrounding streets. That trip generation letter showed 186 trips per day with a peak hour in the AM of 14 trips and a peak hour in the PM of 17 trips. That is well below the required or the threshold for requiring a traffic study, and there would not be any additional off-site improvements to the public streets required based on that trip generation. Another concern that we looked at and wanted to make sure we addressed as we looked through this is parking within the subdivision. As a multifamily product, at least from the zoning code's perspective on this item, the parking standard would be 1 space per unit. The applicant actually did additional research into it and found ITE standards listing at 1.8 units or parking spaces required per unit. And they've actually provided 2 parking spaces per unit for the 32 homes plus 19 guest parking spaces for a total of 83 parking spaces where our code would only require 32 spaces. So we feel that this this project is adequately parked. So there are 5 findings associated with conditional use permits. Finding C1 requires that the proposal complies with the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan designation for this site is C, or commercial. That designation specifically calls out multifamily projects as permitted and appropriate primary uses in the C land use. Additionally, this proposal supports policy, comprehensive plan policy MG9 as a compact development, policy CF1 as city services are available to this site, policy C4 as sidewalks will be provided both within the proposed development as well as along Galleria Parkway, helping to continue to complete that pedestrian infrastructure along Galleria. Additionally, it fulfills policy H2 as it provides an additional housing type in the area. Finding C2 requires compatibility with adjacent properties. As I mentioned, this is within a commercial, a predominantly commercial planned development. There is commercial development both to the north, the east, and across Galleria Parkway to the west, and then it is bordered by single-family housing to the south. As I mentioned earlier, commercial development or commercial land uses, the land use designation for commercial in the comprehensive plan specifically calls out multifamily as an appropriate use, so we see compatibility there. Additionally, throughout the city, we see multifamily and single-family residential land uses adjacent to each other commonly, so we don't feel there's a compatibility issue there as well, or either. To address some of the potential compatibility concerns between those uses, there's also, if we look at the landscape plan, there is heavy landscaping proposed along that would be the south property line for this development. That is a combination of deciduous and columnar evergreen plantings to help reduce any potential impact between those two uses. So that is something that staff looked at. There's actually really heavy landscaping within this project because not only do they need to meet the MF2 landscaping standards, but they also need to meet the landscaping standards of the handbook, which are fairly high. And so they've attempted to meet both of those, and they've done a pretty good job. This is obviously still the preliminary landscaping plan, and final landscaping will be required at the final mapping stage, which we'll talk about during the tentative map item that's later on the agenda. But as of right now, this appears to be in substantial compliance with both the MF2 and the Spanish Springs Town Center Plan Development Handbook. Additionally, finding C3 addresses impairment of natural resources. This is a proposed development of an established plan development. We didn't feel that natural resources would be impaired by this development. And then C4 requires that we address other identified impacts for this project. Those impacts that staff had identified were parking, traffic, and design standards. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, we have addressed those by looking at the parking counts, the trip generation, and assigning design standards from MF2 where applicable. The final finding is C5 does require public notice. All owners of property within 500 feet of this site were noticed, including the mobile home park, which is kind of kitty corner. You can see just the south kind of tail end of it. You can't really see, this is kind of open space towards the back of it, but it connected to that. So we actually noticed all residents within that mobile home park as in according with state law. And then additionally, we posted, or public notice was published in the Reno Gazette-Journal on August 22nd. Staff is recommending approval of this request. I am available for any questions if you have them. This applicant also has a presentation if you'd like to hear that.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Let's bring up the applicant, and we'll go into questions after that, or after the public hearing.
Where do I find my, sorry, bear with me here just a second. There we go. Good evening, Commissioner. Stacy Huggins for the record with Wood Rogers representing the applicant. I am here tonight to request approval for a conditional use permit. I don't want to spend too much time on the background. Ian did a great job, but just a little bit for comparison or so you can get a better idea. This is a 3.10 acre parcel. Master plan designation, as Ian said, is commercial. The zoning is new urban development or PD, again, governed by the Spanish Springs Town Center handbook. This site, as Ian indicated, was originally planned for commercial uses. That handbook is primarily commercial in nature. It does allow townhomes within the RCS02, I can't tell, which I've highlighted here. This arrow is generally where the site is. It is surrounded by a mix of commercial and residential uses, including condos and single-family residential to the south, and the commercial, potential mini storage to the east, the commercial retail across the street to the west, and then also to the north. So again, conditional use permit for 32-lot, single-family attached townhome subdivision. As you can see here, this is a sheet right out of the PD handbook. Townhouse is allowed through this conditional use permit in this district. The 32 single-family attached townhomes are intended to generally be single-family in nature. They are for home ownership, individual private home ownership. The units will range from 1475 to 1606 square feet. All of the units are 2-story. All of the units will have 3 bedrooms. All of the units will have 2-car garages that are underneath the primary living structure. The buildings are clustered with a rear-loaded access, so these function as alleyways. They are roads, but they are considered an alley. The driveway will come in from the back with front access out here along this sidewalk area. There is just a little under an acre of open space included with this project. It's 31%. The handbook required 20%, so we're a little over on our open space. That does include this significant buffer along the east edge. This is approximately 30 feet wide. And we did that to buffer this, again, single family in nature project from the adjacent mini storage use that is allowed on this property next door. Along this boundary, as part of this project, and to help mitigate that, there will be a fence. We didn't think a wall was appropriate as part of this project, so we've proposed a fence along the boundaries of this project to match what's happening to the south there, where there is an existing 6-foot-tall wooden fence. We are including recreational amenities throughout this site, which is one of the items that is a requirement of the Sparks multifamily development. So over in the open space along the eastern edge, we will probably have something like lawn bowling or bocce, I think they call it, or horseshoes. There will be benches and tables that can be strategically located within these common areas to give the folks within this community places to recreate or just enjoy the outside. Pedestrian access will be available via sidewalks throughout all those common areas and along in front of each of the buildings. Parking, as Ian said, I think he mentioned that we asked for a parking reduction. When we first looked at this site, we were parking it on a single family basis. So as I said, each of the units have 2-car garage. So per a single family residential project, we had to provide 1 space per, or 2 spaces per unit. So we've done that in the garages. We also have 19 guest spaces, which are strategically located throughout this site to make sure that people can park and get around. It also includes handicap spaces as required by code. Ian touched on the traffic. There is an existing roadway network that can provide capacity or is adequate for everything associated with this project. This project will generate 186 ADT with 17 p.m. peak hour trips. When the commercial center was originally approved, the shopping center on this site anticipated about 1,200 ADT. So it's significantly lower now with this single family residential project. So I wanted to just point that out. And then again, all of the utilities are available nearby. We are anticipating about 33,000 GPD treated at Tom Wharf. Just real quick, I wanted to show you what the buildings are anticipated to look like. These are samples of the building elevations. The colors are compatible with what is being built or has been built within this planned development. The buildings are 30 feet in height, which is allowed in this area. So they're consistent with what's happening out there. These are just the side elevations, just so you could get a perspective of everything. That generally is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. The architect is here if you have any questions about the architecture. Our civil engineer is here if you have any questions about the site design. We're all available to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Does the commission have any questions for Ms. Huggins? Commissioner Shabazz.
Mr. Chair, I have a fairly simple question. My question revolves around finding C4 traffic, specifically pedestrian traffic. Mainly, I'd like to know, as far as the buffer zone on the road itself, is there anything to deter pedestrians from crossing right into the, crossing the street without going all the way to the corner where the actual where the actual crossing is? That would be of a specific concern for us.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I just want to clarify, are you talking about pedestrians crossing Galleria Parkway?
I am talking about the crossing of Galleria Parkway outside a crosswalk. That is correct.
I do believe that there's a median there. I don't have a way to stop pedestrians from crossing the street mid-cross, but there is a crosswalk with a signal at Los Altos that I believe they will, I would like to think they would go up to and utilize.
Well, I took a ride up there, and it is a bit of a walk to get to the actual crosswalk. So, putting myself in the position of what a typical resident might want to do if they want to go to Sonic or whatever, they might cross there. Is there a possibility of putting a barrier to guide people in the right direction on Galleria Parkway as far as your project?
I'm hesitant to offer to do that because I'm not sure from an engineering perspective with the roadway.
I'm not talking about the roadway, just your development in that buffer zone that is bordering Galleria Parkway.
Would you like a sign there that says no crossing on the
Or
corner?
possibly a fence. I've seen a lot of those in these types of developments.
We could certainly look at it as long as the fence did not interfere with the visual triangle of the corners. I think, I would look to the developer. Do you see any problem with that?
I don't think that's reasonable.
Hold on. You're gonna have to come up, put your name on the record.
My name's, that hurt. My name's Bill Fleiner. I was the developer of this whole project, including the west side. And as far as putting barriers up, we don't have any barriers along Los Altos Parkway. We don't have any on Pyramid Lake Highway. I mean, there's crosswalks. They make us put in handicap ramps at the intersections. There's also another walkway at the next driveway to the south, next intersection to the south. And if people are going to jaywalk and there's a fence there, they're going to jump the fence unless it's 8 feet high. It's just that simple. So I don't think that that's a reasonable request or something that makes a lot of sense to do on the street line, on the curb. I mean, they're going to walk around it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fleiner. Were there any other questions for the applicant before we do the public hearing?
I have one for the staff.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Peterson.
And since this is a conditional use permit, we put 5 conditions on it. Your 5th condition has to deal with the private roadways in there, that they are to keep and maintain them. Could you tell me exactly what assurance we have that that might be kept up?
So, Commissioner Peterson, Ian Crittenden for the record, senior planner. The finding number, or not finding, sorry, condition number 5 does talk about doing a study to look at the cost that would be required to maintain the private streets within the development and a plan for how to generate those funds. We've had a couple of developments recently that were quite a bit larger than this, but had a similar situation where it was single-family owned parcels with private roads. If this were, for instance, a true multifamily product where it was all owned by one developer, that maintenance would be a lot less of a potential concern for the city because it would be all part of that common ownership. But in cases where the HOA is going to have to maintain those roads and so forth, we feel like this is an appropriate way to try to make sure that we've got some assurances from the applicant that they've thought about what that cost is going to be and how they're going to generate those revenues to account for that maintenance and repair. Our ability to enforce those repairs essentially comes at requiring this report to be done at the time of the final map. Beyond that, as they are private roads, it will be up to the HOA to maintain their streets, just like any other common space within an HOA community.
In the proposal to estimate and have some way of generating the funds, is that now or in maybe 15, 20 years from now when those roads may deteriorate?
Yeah, that would be part of that study, would be looking at the current maintenance and future replacement / repair costs, and they would assess that throughout that study would look at that, the timeline and costs as they increase.
Because we know all those costs increase every year.
That would be taken into account.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Okay, any other questions, quick questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I will, we'll have another shot at it, Commission, but this time I'll open up the public hearing on PCN 180039. If there are any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item, you'll have 3 minutes. We ask that you come down, put your name and address on the record, and then fill out a comment card afterwards. So is there any members of the public who'd like to come up and speak on this item? Come on up, ma'am.
My name's Dorothy White. My family and I own a house directly behind the planned townhouse complex. So I have a number of concerns. It certainly will be nice to have that huge dirt lot removed that's been there mountain for the last couple of years. I will touch on some of the issues that the previous folks spoke about. First of all, parking. Where exactly is access and egress on this entire lot? Is it going to be on Los Altos, or is it going to come in off of Galleria? That'll make a huge difference. So we need answers to that, because if you're going to come in off of Galleria, it's going to be a problem for the people who live on Papaya Drive. There's probably about 10 houses, perhaps more. Our back fences are going to line up right with this complex. So that's a big issue. The other thing about parking is the housing track, there's limited parking in the housing track. And something as simple as, I'm a member of our HOA board, something as simple as proposing a community garage sale had to be nixed because there isn't adequate parking for members of the public to come in. The housing track is very limited. It has 2 exits / entrance, one off of Costa Azul, the other is off of Papaya Drive. So I want to make sure that we're not going to be overwhelmed with traffic from the housing division that you're planning here. That's really important. The next thing is location of the buildings. I saw the map. I would like a clearer explanation as to what faces what. The housing development looks very nice, but the last thing I want is to have somebody peering into my backyard. We have bedrooms in the back. Most of the houses have large enclosed porches with a big open area against the back fence. Just between 3 of my neighbors and I, we have 6 dogs, so we need to consider the noise element too, because it's going to be heck for all of us to have to live with the fact that for the weeks and months that you'll be building out there, we're going to have the dogs go crazy out there. So we need some consideration as to what's going on, when it's going on, and for how long. I hope I'm not going to be sitting there for 6, 8, 10, 12 months having to listen to the racket of the building. I understand it takes time to create buildings. I understand it takes time to create a development. But I hope to God I'm not going to be sitting there for weeks and months on end hearing endless building noises out there. So I'm very interested in exactly how these buildings are going to be located and what kind of visual they're going to have into our backyards, into our homes. Okay, what about the separation between the young lady said, oh, we decided not to build a wall, we'll just put up a fence. Well, we all obviously have backyard fences, one continuous line of backyard fence.
Okay, thank you very much, Dorothy. You had 3 minutes. We'll move on to the public hearing, but we'll make sure staff answers your questions when they come back up.
Okay, on the fence issue, it's the separation between what is going to be the townhouse complex and the fences, and how much space there's going to be in between. Can anybody just walk back there? Am I going to be concerned about criminal activity?
Understood, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Come on up, ma'am. Oh, and Dorothy, if you could, please fill out a comment card. Welcome, please state your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Wyla Prey. I'm Dorothy's neighbor. I live at 480 Papaya Drive.
Thank you.
First of all, when we were the original owners, we bought 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, almost 3. We checked what was going to go, what type of property was behind us and what we could expect to be behind us. We were told by our realtor checking maps, and she was very thorough. She said that it would be commercial. Well, commercial to me is not a townhouse. Commercial to me are retail. So now we have a townhouse. Now, I have nothing against townhouses, but I do have a problem with a townhouse going in behind my property where should be retail. Now, we knew about the storage units, but we were never told that a townhouse or any residential property would be going in behind our property. Again, as Dorothy said, our property lots are very small, and our backyards, we don't have a lot of distance between where our patios are. Our bedrooms are in the back. My concern with townhouses is, where are their windows going to be compared to where my back windows are? I do not want to have to go into my bedroom every time I go into my room, have to pull my curtain to change a blouse or do what I want to do in my bedroom. In the middle of the day, in the evening, I close my windows at night, but I don't want to have them closed in the morning, in the daytime. I don't want to lose the privacy that I have in my yard. We do have patios in the back. I also have a concern with the fencing. If their fence and our fence and there's space between, what's going to grow in that space between? Weeds, I'm assuming. Okay, so who's going to take care of that? That's going to be a hazard. That's going to be a hazard for fire. I mean, would you like weeds in your backyard? I don't think so. So that's a concern. How is that going to be addressed? Noise, okay. The construction is noisy. When do they start construction? Are they going to start working at 8 in the morning, at 7 in the morning, at 6 in the morning? How is this going to affect our lifestyle? I don't think any of us want to be awakened before we normally are awakened in the morning because of construction, or late at night, which of course wouldn't be an issue, I don't think, but morning it is. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if you wouldn't mind, please fill out a comment card with our secretary.
Okay.
Okay, any other public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing on PCN 180039. We'll bring this back to the commission for questions and discussion and possible action. Are there any questions of staff?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go Commissioner Fuens.
Thank you. Ian, right, and we're gonna get on so Ian can hear me. All right, Ian. So, right now we're talking about the, just the, essentially not the zone change, but the conditional use in a commercial district. Do you have any, when we did the sewer study back in October, this is gonna be 33,000 gallons of, to go down to the sewage plant. Was this 33,000 figured into that sewer study? And the reason I ask the question is this gonna hamper development later on for developments that were included in that sewer study that may not be able to then tap into the line?
I couldn't tell you if it was precisely that amount was included in the study. This area was considered with its development. I did talk with our utility manager about this development, and he told me that he was not concerned about this level of development, that sewer flow is not a large amount to accommodate into the pipe. And so they will have to, this is addressed more extensively in the tentative map process, but they will have to provide basically they'll have to provide us a study that shows how that it can be accommodated at that time. But it was anticipated for sewer flow to come from this property. I couldn't tell you if the exact amounts are the same, but I know that essentially there was a dip with the approval of the adjacent mini storage. They actually have a lower sewer flow than standard commercial would, and so I think that essentially the thought was that there would be a balance there.
So it's your opinion or staff's opinion that if this was figured into a retail spot and then moved with a conditional use permit to multifamily, that the sewer flows are adequate?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I had a question. Can you bring up Exhibit 1? And then can we address the access, where the property is, what the streets are and where they're going to be able to access into the townhomes?
Sure. So as mentioned, this is it's adjacent to Galleria Parkway and just south of Los Altos Parkway, and they will access off of the existing streets that enter into the commercial center now. If we go to, in fact, this is actually, the landscape plan actually makes it a lot easier to see. So this is Galleria Parkway. They'll have to turn right off of Galleria Parkway and onto the existing road, and then they would turn into the subdivision off of that existing interior circulation road within their development.
I just wanted them to see that it would not be affecting on their Papaya Drive.
There'll be no direct access to Galleria Parkway or Los Altos. It'll all be off of the existing roads that are within that development.
And then regarding privacy, I don't know if this is a question for the developer, but in looking at the exhibit that's up there, where are the windows? Because it doesn't look like it's looking, but maybe the developer would be better able to address that.
So you can see in this site plan that along the south of this north-south oriented kind of block of townhomes, that would be the side of them, and then on this block that's also close, that would be the rear of those units. If you look at the elevations for those buildings, those are actually not the right buildings. It's these longer ones, I believe. Yeah. So the side do have some windows. You can see that these windows are actually smaller, high windows, and then there's one low window and one high window there. So there is some second-story windows there, and then the same would be true along the back of those properties. To address the privacy to what degree we can, this is actually a roughly 35-foot separation between the rear property line of essentially this property and the abutting residential. There's 35 feet between those two with an over 8-foot landscape buffer that will be heavily planted with both deciduous and evergreen trees. Now, at planting, will those be an absolute screen? No, but over time, they will develop into a more and more dense screen to help provide some measure of privacy for both property owners on both sides.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Any other questions? Commissioner Brock?
In addressing the question regarding the fencing, is there going to be additional fencing on this development and between this development and the existing development? Is there going to be an open space in between? What does that look like?
Staff would highly recommend against double fencing. We typically like to see a single fence, so we don't have that no man's land that tends to fill with weeds or trash or what have you. We would recommend a single fencing along the southern and the western property lines that would coincide with the fencing for whatever additional development it is, the houses to the south or the mini storage to the west, or the east, excuse me. Now, I believe the mini storage actually had a block wall intended as part of their plan, but as they have not built yet, and the applicants here wanting to build now, we would assume that they would build whatever fence they felt comfortable with at this time, and then they would work with that landowner in the future to, again, not create a double fence and to create privacy for, that separation needed for both uses, but not to create a no man's land between two fences that is a maintenance nightmare.
Thank you.
Commissioner Frank?
Commissioner Peterson. Ian, since I have you, I have one other question I'd like to ask. The widest part of that lot from that other street over there to its property boundaries, can you tell me what that distance is?
From this point to this point? Is that what
Where
you're
I
talking
catch
about?
the widest part to the back of the lot,
The widest part, I'm sorry, I'm still not clear.
to the back of the lot.
So to the south side from the north
Now,
side?
going north to south.
I don't know that distance off the top of my head. I could potentially pull it out of one of the site plans, but I don't have that right now. It doesn't.
I don't have any idea how deep it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Good question.
the total depth. There.
Well, what I'm driving at is that's going to be the longest private street in your project. Are you having speed limits throughout this project?
Sorry, so Stacy Huggins for the record. I'm sorry. So let me just answer your first question. It's approximately 330 feet in length from end to end. And then I'm sorry, what was your second question? Because I was thinking about the
Second
number.
question, then, that being the longest street, and also you're going to have garages backing out into that street. Is there going to be speed limits within your project?
We currently do not have garages backing out on,
No, into this.
oh, the
private-
alleyway. Yes, I'm
correct.
sorry. There will likely be posted speed limits within that.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite long enough to add speed buttons.
No,
But if
I would
you
agree.
posted a sign of 15 miles an hour within your project, I think that would be a safety precaution.
And I think we can do that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Sorry about that. Any other questions for staff by the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Go
I
ahead,
do have
Commissioner
one.
Shabazz.
This may be a little bit out of scope, but please just indulge me. The question would be basically, as far as when we do get weather, rain, that kind of thing, will there be an existing gutter system within, for example, that roadway there that has the garages on both sides? Is there going to be a gutter system going, directing rainwater through there? Do you have any idea where rainwater is going to go as far as this development?
Commissioner Shabazz, you might want to hold on to that question when we get to the tentative map.
Okay. All right. No problem.
Any other questions? I had a couple for staff. We had a couple public comments talking about concerns about hours of construction. Could you put on the record what our code is with hours of construction?
Code is, City of Sparks Municipal Code for hours of, construction hours is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday, and no construction on Sunday. I believe that is the same as it is in the handbook, so that would be what we would expect them to be compliant with.
Okay, thank you. My next question was, in terms of finding C1 and compatibility with the comprehensive plan, does staff have any concerns about the loss of this commercial land, with it being multifamily, if this conditional use permit is allowed? Concerns from meeting the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plans, but also, is there a fiscal impact if this was going to be developed commercial as opposed to what it is now? That's where I'm going with that.
Sure. So typically, we would not look at fiscal impact analysis on properties less than 20 acres. The thought being that parcels less than 20 acres, the ability for them to have a sizable impact to the city as far as fiscal impact is too small to put that burden on to the applicant. We didn't really look at the potential impact of this project versus straight commercial or more of a standard commercial you would expect, because the comprehensive plan specifically calls out multifamily as an appropriate primary use in the commercial district. So no, we didn't really look at that. Staff wasn't concerned with it because of the comprehensive plan specifically stating that this is an appropriate primary use.
Okay. And my last question was a follow-up to the study session. I was looking for additional information about the garbage service in this development. And will there be a community dumpster?
No, we talked about it some with the applicant after that meeting. Because these are single units and they'll have individual addresses and so forth, they will do polycarts from Waste Management just like any other single-family home would.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. This time, we bring it to the commission for action. Anyone would like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take a shot at it if you don't mind.
Commissioner Peterson.
I move to approve the conditional use permit CU 18-0011 associated with PCN 18-0039, adopting findings C1 through C5 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff's report, and subject to the 5 conditions of approval.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Peterson. We have a motion on the table. Is there a second on the motion?
Commissioner Fewens will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions or comments on the motion? I'll make a quick comment. I'm always a little concerned when we're losing commercial land, and you know, in particular with the loss of job employment opportunities and potential fiscal impacts. But I think on this one, I'm going to go with staff's recommendation. I think that the developer has done a good job of designing the character of the neighborhood to make it compatible with the existing uses. And I do concur with staff's recommendation that this proposed conditional use will help advance policies MG9 and H2 in helping provide housing in our city. I will be supporting the motion. Were there any other comments before we call the vote? Commissioner Shabazz.
I just had the one. While I wholeheartedly agree with what you have just posited, I do continue to have the same concern regarding, you know, safety of the crossing of Galleria Parkway. I do have a concern that this may be something that we end up, you know, that will come before this council again as we do see as safety issues come across. That said, I do feel, just as you do, that this is a development worth working on.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will now call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Were there any abstentions on that one? Okay, no, I think the motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 13. This is PCN, this is general business, PCN 180038. Consideration and possible recommendation of approval of a tentative map for 146 lot, single-family residential subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners. I'm Jonathan Cummins, Assistant Planner. PCN 180038 is a tentative map request for a 146-lot, single-family residential subdivision on 30.28 acres in the Kylie Ranch North Phase 6 Plan Development. The site's located at the southeast corner of Kylie Parkway and Windmill Farms Road, outlined in blue in the image. The Kylie North Phase 6 Handbook was approved by City Council in 2014, and staff believes that the proposed tentative map is compatible with subdivisions that have been recently approved in Kylie North Phase 6. The proposed tentative map will include lot sizes ranging from 4,994 square feet to just over 12,500, maintaining a density of 4.82 dwelling units per acre, conforming to both the Kylie North Phase 6 Handbook and the Sparks Comprehensive Plan. Staff believes the following 12 findings can be made by the Planning Commission. Finding T1 requires conformance with the goals and policies of the comp plan. Those goals and policies are policy C4, requiring that new developments have appropriate pedestrian networks. Policy H1, that appropriate zoning and infrastructure exist prior to the production of new housing. Policy H2, that a variety of housing types exist to expand the choices available to an increasingly diverse population. Policy CC8, that new developments incorporate a sense of neighborhood diversity, which is achieved by pretty widely varying lot sizes in this tentative map. And finally, goal CF1, that the city is able to provide acceptable service levels to new developments. Finding T2 requires conformance with the city's street master plan. Staff has determined that the proposed tentative map does. Finding T3 requires conformance with environmental and health laws. Staff has determined that this tentative map does. Finding T4 requires availability of water. Developers determined that the development will require just over 50 acre-feet of water per year, which will be provided by TUMWA, and water rights have been established. Finding T5 requires the availability of and access to utilities. Developers estimated that the development will generate just over 142,000 gallons of sewage per day. The developer will provide evidence of adequate sewer capacity prior to the recordation of the final map. Additionally, stormwater and drainage will be provided by the stormwater and drainage plan will be reviewed by the city engineer prior to the recordation of that final map as well. Finding T6 requires the availability of public services such as schools, police, fire, transportation. Washoe County School District estimates that the subdivision will generate 33 new students at Hall Elementary, 7 new students at Shaw Middle School, and 14 new students at Spanish Springs High School. Additionally, Sky Ranch Middle School is currently under construction and is intended to relieve the stress on the middle schools there. Sparks Police and Fire Departments will provide service. RTC has provided guidelines for access and levels of service to be met by the developer. And finally, NV Energy will provide gas and electric services to the site. Finding T7 addresses the effects the proposed subdivision would have on public streets and highways. Staff's determined that the volume of new traffic can be served by existing roads. Finding T8 addresses the physical characteristics of the land, such as floodplain, slope, and soil. The developer will be required to provide a final hydrological and geotechnical reports prior to the recordation of the final map. Finding T9 requires that staff consider the comments of outside agencies. We received comments from Washoe County School District, the Regional Transportation Commission, the State Division of Water Resources, and the State Department of Environmental Protection. I've already covered the RTC and school district comments. Water Resources had no comments. The Nevada Department of Environmental Protection did express concern about documentation defining sewer service provider. According to the city engineer, the city will be providing that service and will serve letters prior to the recordation of the final map to address the concern of the Environmental Protection Office. Finding T10 is specific to fire protection. I mentioned before that Site will be served by the Sparks Fire Department. Finding T11 requires that staff address any other impacts. We find that this tentative map is compatible with previous subdivisions that have been established in Kylie North, and we'll add that common areas within this tentative map will be maintained by an HOA or a landscaping maintenance association. Final landscape plans to address that will be approved prior to the recordation of the final map. Finding T12 requires public notice be given for the item. Posting of agendas for tonight's meeting as well as the subsequent city council hearing will act as that notice. Staff's recommending the planning commission forward a recommendation of approval, and I will be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions for staff? Okay, is there a applicant's representative on this one? Come on up, please.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Michelle Rambo. I'm through Rubicon Design Group representing the applicant. Jonathan did a fabulous job. I really have nothing significant to add to what he said. So I will just be available to answer questions. I also have a civil engineer with us as well, if there are any questions for him.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant's representative? Okay, good job. Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. Are there any questions or comments? I had a question for, couple questions for staff. Jonathan, is this proposed tentative map located within the city's 6-minute fire response time or outside?
I believe that the sites this is one of the sites within Kylie that falls under the mutual aid agreement between the city of Sparks as well as Truckee Meadows Fire Protection, which is located, not far from the site. I believe that it falls within that scope of response.
So it's outside of the 6-minute response time?
I believe it's outside the 6-minute response. It's outside the 6-minute and
Okay.
within the mutual aid. Yeah.
Thank you. My last question had to do with finding T17. It talks about off-site road improvements that would need to be made. Where would those go? Or are we talking the Windmill Farms?
Say again, I'm sorry, I wasn't following.
I was looking at finding T17. It talks about
Finding
requiring
T17?
off-site road improvements.
T,
Where would those be located?
I'm not, which finding you're at?
Oh, okay.
7?
Maybe it's T7. Yeah, I don't know where they added 10 to it. That would be a much longer presentation if it was 17. Huh?
It's T7.
T7, thank
Yes.
you. My apologies. No wonder you couldn't find it.
Okay, so now I got your finding. Can I have your question again? I'm sorry.
So where are those off-site road improvements? Where would those be required?
Off-site road improvements as far as the effect that the access on and off the site is going to create on Windmill Farms? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, would they be? Yeah, I was just saying where those off-site road improvements would be taking place. Is it?
General improvements, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, the street that's obviously the street that connects us into the subdivision off of Windmill Farms there. It's sort of in the center of this one here. Mr. Martini is going to elaborate on that.
Commissioner Carey, for the record, John Martini, your Community Services Director. Those offsite improvements will be on Windmill Farms, and I believe it's Kylie Ranch Parkway.
Kylie Parkway here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those roads are partially under construction, so it is a standard condition to require off-site connections for the internal subdivision roads have to connect out to the parkways. That's what the condition covers.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions? Okay, we'll bring this back to the commission for possible action.
Vice Chair Gary, I would like to make a motion. I move to forward to the City Council a recommendation of approval to the tentative map for the Kylie Ranch North Phase 6 Village 37C subdivision associated with PCN 18-0038, adopting findings T1 through T12 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report and subject to conditions of approval 1 through 15.
Thank you, Commissioner Brock. Is there a second on the motion?
Commissioner Peterson, all second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Brock, a second by Commissioner Peterson. Any Any discussion or comments on the motion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, the motion is carried. We'll move on to item number 14 on the agenda, that's PCN 180039. That's consideration and possible recommendation of approval of a tentative map for a 32-unit multifamily townhome project.
Vice Chairman Carey, members of the Planning Commission, Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. I don't know if you remember minutes ago when we approved this body approved the conditional use permit, but this is the tentative map for that same project. As it is a townhome project, they do need to go through the tentative and final map processes. So all streets within this development will be privately owned and maintained by the HOA. The landscaping will be maintained by either the HOA or the LMA in regards to landscaping along Galleria Parkway. Sidewalk infrastructure is being provided throughout the interior of the project, as well as connecting to the exterior along Galleria Parkway, extending that pedestrian infrastructure along Galleria Parkway. Tentative maps, as you just heard, have 12 findings, so we'll try to go through those in detail, but as quickly as is reasonable. Finding T1 requires conformance with zoning and the comprehensive plan. The townhomes are permitted in the Spanish Springs Town Center handbook, subject to a conditional use permit, which this body just heard. This proposal supports policy C4 as sidewalks are provided, policy CF1 as city services are available at this location, and policy H2 as this provides another housing type in the area. Finding T2 requires conformity with the city's streets master plan. The proposed townhome subdivision will access via existing roads within the city's streets master plan on private streets, and so they conform with that street master plan. Finding T2 requires the outside agencies that provide services related to public health be contacted for input. That would include water and so forth. Those agencies were contacted. They do have requirements that they put into their comment letters. Those have been incorporated into the findings, basically requiring that adequate water rights be dedicated prior to the final map for this project. Well, that's not exactly the right one, because the next one, T4, is specifically about those water rights, and condition 5 specifically addresses that, in that they will have to be dedicated prior to the issuance of, or prior to the approval of a final map. Finding T5 requires access to sewer, as we discussed previously. The proposed subdivision will generate 33,600 gallons of sewer per day, and the applicant will have to provide evidence that they have adequate capacity prior to. The final map by staff does believe that they will be able to make that evidence, but they still have to provide it to us. Finding T6 requires that other public agencies provide public services such as schools, police, and transportation, and so forth, be contacted. Washington County School informed the city that the proposed development would generate 1 elementary school student and 1 high school student, and so we're not particularly concerned about that. The project will not generate enough traffic to require off-site improvements, and fire and police protection provided by the city of Sparks. Finding T7 requires that impacts on adjacent streets be addressed. As I mentioned previously, this project is not anticipated to generate enough trips to impact adjacent public infrastructure. Finding T8 requires that the characteristics of the soil and land be considered. This site is not in a floodplain. It is very flat, besides the big pile of dirt, which doesn't really count as topography. And then finally, a final geotechnical report will be required prior to the issuance of building permits. Finding T9 requires that comments from entities reviewing the proposal be considered. We did receive comments. They are attached to the staff report and have been incorporated into the conditions of approval as appropriate. Finding T10 requires that fire protection needs for the project be considered. This site will be served by the City of Sparks for fire protection and is within the 6-minute response plan. Finding T11 requires that other identified impacts be considered. Landscaping and architecture were those that staff identified. Those will be addressed primarily through the MF2 design standards for both architecture and landscaping. And then finally, finding T12 requires that proper public notice be given. Tentative maps, that is accomplished through the posting of them in the agenda for both Planning Commission and City Council, and then hearing them here. Staff is recommending approval of this 32-lot townhome subdivision. That's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thanks, Ian. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Shabazz?
Seeing as though I did jump the gun the last time, same question, or do I have to wait for the geotechnical report regarding storm drainage?
No, storm drainage would be addressed prior to that. As part of their final map documents, they'll have to show how they're going to handle that water. There's actually stormwater infrastructure already in this area, and they'll have to tie into that and show that they are meeting the flows as are required per the handbook and the existing stormwater infrastructure that's in there, so that they will have to be addressed.
And can you point out on the map where that storm infrastructure may be already?
There is, it's off the map, actually. There's a clarifying basin. Is that the right terminology? No. There is a place where stormwater goes toward on the east side of this as part of that stormwater. They'll have to tie into that. There's actually, I believe,
So it'd be, if I understand you correctly, it would be east of it.
Yes.
So it would go through the proposed storage area, is that
Yes.
correct?
It'll
property?
travel to the east. The project that's between this proposal and the previous, I believe they were actually running along the south side. They had their stormwater run in that direction. And so they'll have to kind of work with that plan and make sure that all that stormwater that's within the series of projects within Spanish Springs Town Center is also supposed to tie into that system. And they'll have to show how they can do that prior to the issuance of a final map.
Thank you very
Approval
much.
of a final map.
That's where it's going. So it's coming right here and coming out there. If you have an overhead.
Oh.
This is the old commercial site.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can show this. Maybe. It was already on. I turned it off. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, all right. So this is the old preliminary plan for the layout of this. This would be the site we're talking about, shown in commercial development. The stormwater right now runs along there and would tie into infrastructure on the east side of the site, just off this, in this area. So it's on the south side down here.
Yeah, actually.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, so that's what they would be working with, tying into, and what they'd have to show that they meet the requirements and so forth prior to the final map.
So since we're now saying it's on the south side, would that be on the border between the single-family homes and the proposed
Correct.
multifamily development?
Correct.
So within that, okay.
Okay, Commissioner Reed?
Isn't there a drainage ditch back in that area that it flows into? Is that where that is, in the
Yeah,
south side?
on the east
Okay,
side.
on the east side, drainage. Does that connect to the North Truckee Drain? Okay.
Okay.
Is that my map?
You're getting your steps in.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Again, John Martini for the record. I would point out to the Planning Commission that this area was master planned for all utilities way back when my hair wasn't quite so gray as it is now. So to answer your question, Commissioner Reed, for the most part, stormwater from this area flows via pipe networks and open channels to the North Truckee Drain, where it then drains to the Truckee River. And yes, it's the big ditch back there.
That's what I thought.
Any questions for Staff, okay. That was a fun stormwater discussion. All right, we'll bring this back to the committee, or is the applicant representative, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay. All right, we'll bring this back to the commission for consideration and possible action.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead, Commissioner Reed.
I move to forward to the city council a recommendation of approval of the tentative map for Galleria Station Townhomes associated with PCN 18-0039, adopting findings T1 through T12 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 15 as listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Brock, I second.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Brock. Is there any discussion or comments on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move into item 15. This is public comment. This is our last public comment period of the evening. If anyone would like to make a public comment at this time, please come forward. State your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes. Welcome back, Dorothy.
I'm Dorothy White, a resident on Papaya Drive. I simply, and my neighbors, we want a clarification. When we spoke earlier, we asked about the fencing behind us and between the proposed townhouses. And what we understood was that there wasn't going to be another fence, it was just going to be our fence line and just trees and things planted back there. What about good neighbor fences? Who takes care of what?
Okay.
I mean, we have our fences, we have our HOA, we know what belongs to us. So does this mean that the backside of the fence is now the responsibility of the townhouses? How do we address this?
I think we may have an answer from staff here.
I think it would be appropriate, basically, rather than address this in public comment, we can discuss this with her afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, stick around, we'll have staff talk with you.
Okay, the other thing is, we were told that we'll plant trees. That's nice. Trees grow big. They have big canopies. They grow roots. What are we going to do about root abatement? I don't want roots coming in 4 or 5 years into my yard, for which I paid a lot of money to have it landscaped, for which my neighbors paid a lot of money to have theirs landscaped. We need to deal with that issue too. And I don't want to be spending my fall and winter cleaning up after somebody else.
Sure, understood. We can have staff address that inquiry as well.
And can we have all the information on the developer, name, phone number? Can we also get information on whom to contact on your commission, as well as the city planners? Because I know, given the way things go, that there will be lots of questions and lots of concerns, and we want somebody we can contact who can give us answers.
Sure, yeah, all that information is publicly available, and we can make sure our staff gets that to her, gets that to you.
We're looking for.
Thank you, Dorothy. Is there any other public comment? Come back up. Please state your name and address again.
Wanda Prey, 480 Papaya on Drive. I would also like to have communication via mail on all of the happenings of our issues and the answers and communications, so that we can stay on top of this. And as we have questions, we know who to contact as well.
Okay.
So if you can just add my name to her name, perfect.
Yeah, stick around. We'll have our staff follow up with the both of you. Okay, any other public comment? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. We'll move down the agenda to item 16. This is comments from commissioners. Is there any comments from commissioners?
I have one.
Mr. Shabazz.
Just wanted to say what an honor it's been to serve with all of you on this commission, as well as with staff. This is my last meeting. I will be deploying to East Africa for about a year, but it's been an absolute honor serving with you and to actually be able to sit up here in the city that I love, the city that I'm from. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Boz. Any other comments from commissioners? I'll make a quick comment. Thank you for your service, Commissioner Shabazz. Good luck on your deployment. And I would like to maybe request for staff, for a future agenda item, if we can maybe have an update on the progress of the 2017 regional plan update. I know that process has been going on, but I think that's an important document for this city and the region. I'd like to kind of know what's going on with the regional plan update process, if we could have a future agenda item on that, please. Are there any other comments from the commission? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 17. That's adjournment, 7:16 PM. I'll adjourn. Thanks.